Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out today to the Innovate with Power BI or Microsoft BI for the enterprise. My name is Mohammed Ali. I work inside the product team for business platform applications, customer success team. And what I help do is actually implement BI solutions with enterprises and customers. And so today, what I really want to start off with is something you've probably all seen before, is this notion of data culture. And I think in the last 10 years, customers and enterprise have gone a long way into realizing how important data is for them. And this, I think, will be pivotal in the next 10 years as well with AI and machine learning and all those nice things about bots taking over the world. And what I really want to spend the time today is talking about what I think modern BI is inside the enterprise and what it may mean in the future as well from a Microsoft standpoint. And so I may say some controversial things. Hopefully, they won't be too controversial for today. And so you may have seen the slide before, presented many times before. This the three wave of motion of BI in the enterprise. About 10 years ago, when you first were looking to do a BI solution, you'd have to get IT involved, and you're already looking at a year timeline minimum just to get that implemented and resolved and getting your business users to use it. The second wave then came along is making Excel more easier to use for analysts and to drive their own data insights. And so analysts would try to avoid IT as much as possible, but there were still some areas where they required IT, and IT had to take their time. The third wave is where Power BI came in, is this notion of self-service analytics to allow everyone, empower everyone inside an organization to carry out analytics. And that's where the third wave came from. And I think the third wave and fourth wave we're kind of seeing a lot more now is this notion of BI is great, but it wouldn't be great if you could integrate BI inside an application and allow me to act on the business insights that you showed me. And that's where I see the fourth wave really taking place, is this notion of artificial intelligence and machine learning playing a very pivotal role in the way BI will head forward in the future. And so what I really want to spend today's session on is, the agenda for today is actually split up BI into 4 succinct boxes. The first one I'm going to spend time today is actually go through the product stack of Microsoft BI. And that normally revolves around 2 main products, Power BI and SSRS. And I'm going to go through a lot of demos in Power BI and SSRS and actually show you a lot of the demos mainly centered around those products today. The next section is scale out. How do you scale out Power BI and SSRS when you're dealing with sheer volumes of data, millions, 100 millions, terabytes of data, petabytes of data? And so I'm going to go through SQL Server Analysis Services as a service in Azure, which released a couple of months back, and actually go through Azure Data Lake and show you when you would use one versus the other, and actually show you how they complement each other in the real-world enterprise. The third section is something that you guys have probably heard a lot about, is this notion of advanced analytics, machine learning, AI, cognitive services. And I'm just going to spend a brief portion of the presentation actually go through what that means and how you can integrate them inside your business intelligence applications. And then the fourth one is where I see the fourth wave going for BI, is how do you appify, how do you make BI actually actionable? How do you actually act on the insights that you see inside most analytics? If you look at a graph, what do you actually do from that? And so there's a lot of work going inside Microsoft to actually make the fourth box a reality. We've come a long way. And so we started off with something called Power BI Embedded, and I'm just going to quickly, briefly spend about 10 minutes actually going through what it means to be appified. As always, I want to make this as interactive as possible. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask during the session. I've got enough material to last me 1.5 hours, but I assume I'll set aside about 15 minutes for Q&A. So please feel free to just pop up with your hand, and I'll happily answer it. And so, I'll start off with the first box, Power BI. How many of you have actually used Power BI today? So quite a handful. How many of you actually implemented Power BI in an enterprise? So not as many as the first, but quite a few of you. So Power BI has come a long way. I think it's coming to a 2nd-year anniversary of GA. And Power BI is really here to serve the promise to help users self-serve. I want everyone in my organization to be able to get insights to their data and actually make good data-driven decisions. And so Power BI comes in 3 flavors. There's a Power BI desktop tool, which is completely free for everyone to use. And it's free, as in there's no catch to it. And you can go download that today. Then there's the Power BI service, where you can, once you've driven and found your insights, found your reports that you want to create and author, you can actually then publish them into Power BI service and then share them within the organization. And then there's Power BI platform, which is, I want to make an app. I want to SaaSify myself. I want to make insights and then deliver them to people outside my organization, customers of mine, so then I can then make potentially a good business model and actually selling good analytics to these guys. You guys may already know this, but Power BI is something worth demoing. So instead of you going through the features one by one, I'm actually going to just spend the time actually demo it right live in front of you guys. So I'm just going to come out of my presentation. I'm going to minimize it, and I'm just going to open up Power BI Desktop for the first time. As you can see, I'm a huge supporter of Roger Federer, hence the picture there. And this is just going to load up Power BI Desktop. And when you first come onto Power BI Desktop, it only takes a couple of seconds to load. You can sign in. You can see some recent articles that have come up. We release updates for Power BI Desktop once every month. So you can expect a handful of features to come up once every month. And normally, they are driven by you guys. We have something called the user voice, where you can submit ideas. We take the top 10 ideas off that list and then try to implement them as fast as we can and bring them into the product as fast as we can. I'd say that's very unique for Microsoft to release once every month for a product. And it's becoming more and more mature. And we're still trying to keep up with that same velocity that we originally had. And so I'm just going to close this window down. And for this, I decided to actually just go to a web URL this morning and see if I could just extract a data set. So I was very interested in the Olympic data set. And so I was just going to extract the Olympic data set. So the first thing you probably want to do when you go into Power BI is click Get Data. And this is where you want to bring in data from a wide variety of sources. And as you can see, there's a long list of this. And we're constantly adding to this. We've added support for SAP in the recent months. We've got Impala. We've got Azure Data Lake added in here as well. And as you can see, the list goes on. I think we've got over 50 connectors. And we're constantly adding to this. Today, for the demo, what I'm going to do is actually connect to something called a web endpoint. And I'm just going to go to the other connector. I could use R as well if I really wanted to. And I'm just going to click Connect. But before I do that, I'm actually just going to pull out the link that I need to connect to and actually show you what this link looks like. So I'm just going to open up my trusty browser, and let's see where this goes. And so this is going to take a couple of seconds to load. How many of you have ever cleansed XML data before and realized what a pain that is? Yeah? So cleaning this XML data normally will require me to go into a language like Python, C#, spend some time to actually really understand what the schema looks like and actually go ahead and cleanse it and then provide it in a form that I could actually analyze. Inside Power BI, we have a tool which is dedicated for doing data cleansing. So what I'm going to do is actually just take this URL, the one I just pasted here, go into Power BI, connect to web, and it's going to click Connect. It's going to ask me to enter a web URL. Just going to paste it in here, and I'm going to click OK. What Power BI is going to do behind the scenes for me is actually connect to that website, download the data, and say, hey, here you go. Here's the data for you. And I'm now going to perform some cleansing on it because it's going to come in XML. I want to actually get it in the right format that I actually want it. And what happened here? Please wait while we establish a connection. Hopefully, the Wi-Fi will improve. And as you can see, the data is not really meaningful for me. It's only got one record. It's only picked up one record by its auto detection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Edit and actually go ahead and make that data more useful. So one of the things, the great thing in Power BI is I can just click on columns that I don't need. So I don't need these first 3 columns. I could say I might want to keep the updated time, but I'm just going to delete them. And what I'm going to do is click this little icon here that's on the Entry tab, which says, hey, I've detected there's a table underneath this column. Do you want to expand it out? Which is effectively what it's saying. So I'm just going to click here and just say Expand. And it's going to say, these are the columns I'm going to expand it. Do you want to select specific columns? I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to have to do this a couple of times, so bear with me. I'm going to click the Content tab and expand it out again. And then go to the Content tab and expand it out again. This is just because someone made the XML highly nested. I have to keep expanding it out until Power BI gets me what I want. And then I'm going to expand it again. And then I'm going to expand it one more time. And now I've got the data that's in the underlying XML. I've got the country, I've got the medals, I've got the frequency, and I've got the date. Those two, the basic information for the Olympic data set I need. So I'm just going to click OK and expand them out. And as you can see, I've got country or location. I've got when the Olympic Games actually were held, summer or winter. I believe that says total, what type of medal it was, total aggregation medal or gold. And then I've also got some other information like the year of the Olympics were held and the count. Some arbitrary value depending on whether I'm looking at medals or whether I'm looking at ranking. So what I'm going to do here is something that you can easily do in Power BI, which if you use R or Python, sometimes doing this can be somewhat tedious. I'm just going to select some columns, and I'm just going to click delete. Very easy, and as you can see on the right-hand side, I've got the steps of cleansing that I've actually performed on the Power BI dataset. This will be always repeated. So if I set this to on refresh, when the next Olympics comes out, I don't have to change my Power BI report. It will automatically update. Just by looking at that web URL, if that web URL changes with the new data, these sets of steps are just done now, will be maintained and done in every refresh of that dataset. I'm going to rename this column because sadly with XML, it does some really weird things. So I'm just going to rename this. Let me find the rename button. I'm just going to put here country. I'm going to put type of game for this column. And this is somewhat tedious sometimes. I apologize. And I'm going to put here, this is the type of medal. Then I'm not too interested in this, so I'm just going to wipe that out. I'm not too interested in this, I'm going to wipe that out. Now I've got a date time field which has been picked up as a string. The great thing in Power BI is this thing called transform. And I'm going to transform it into a date time. And it automatically picked up as a date time field. And now what I'm going to do is I only am interested in year. I'm not really interested in the time of year for the Olympics. So I'm just going to convert this into year. Very easy, and I did that in a few simple clicks. If I was doing this in R or Python, I would have to somewhat memorize the actual command. And let me just put here year and continue on. The final column is value. This depends on what I'm actually looking at, filter. So I'm just going to put here value for now. And then the other columns I'm just going to wipe out just because we're not interested in them. And now what I've done is I've gone from something highly nested to an XML that would probably take me a couple of hours to do in a different language. In Power BI, I've done them in a couple of minutes. And in Power BI, all you need to do is now is just say close and apply, basically. Take that data set. Now let me do some analysis on it. And this will just take a couple of seconds to repeat those steps on the XML, on the full XML. And now it's done. A couple of things in Power BI you might want to realize. If you guys came from an SSAS background, you'll have to normally set the data types. Power BI will normally pick them up for you, but sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to click on value, go to modeling tab, and just say, hey, this is a number, not a text. And all I do here is I'm going to say, I think it's a whole number. I don't think there's any decimal places. It's letting me know that there's some impacting changes if there were any decimal places there. And there you go. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, hey, I want to look at the year, and I want to look at the value. For now, this may not be that meaningful. Let me put year on the axes. Let me try that again. There you go. This is not meaningful because I'm actually looking at a conglomerate of everything, including the gold, silver, world ranking results put together. So let me just put some filters up very quickly. So I'm just going to put country here and turn this into a slicer and make this into a list. I'll do that in a second. Let me just move that out of the way. I'm going to put the type of medal here as well. Convert that into a... I'm going to convert it to a drop-down, actually. That might be easier to see. And I'm just going to put that there. I'm going to just, nicely format this thing. I could spend hours here doing this, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to put the type of games. I think I should do that as well. Yeah. And let me just quickly minimize this. And the great thing about Power BI is I can just quickly drag and drop and really get the results I'm really looking for. So I'm just going to convert this to drop-down as well. And so this time what I'm going to say is I'm only interested in the Summer Olympic Games. I'm only interested in their world ranking, so Olympic ranking. And I'm originally from the UK, as you can sense from the accent. I'm actually going to look at how Great Britain did over the last couple of years. And if I select Great Britain, I can actually see how their ranking has improved over the last couple of years. I could start comparing this with other countries. I could look at their gold medal counts as well. So actually, instead of looking at the Olympic ranking, let's see how Great Britain's done in total gold medals. And as you can see, the program that is implemented in Great Britain is actually helping us improve our gold medal count. And again, I could go really savvy here, and I can start comparing different countries. draw more graphs, and actually do a deeper level of information. The great thing is I was actually going to do this, but I think you guys hopefully get enough about Power BI that I was actually going to mix it up with the IMDb movie data and see if there's any correlation between the year the movie comes out versus how well we do on our metadata, but I won't do that today. And so once you're done with the analysis, I'm just going to save this file. Let me just save it somewhere nice. I'm going to put here that this is the Olympic demo. And I'm going to save it here. And once you save it, the great thing is in Power BI is you can actually directly publish it to the service. So the desktop tool and the service are directly linked to one another. And so I can now publish this, share this out with my organization. So let me just show you quickly how you'd accomplish that. So I'm just going to say publish. And it says, can you sign in? So I'm just going to try to sign in. Hopefully it won't ask me to do two-factor authentication. Nope, wrong email. And I'm going to click sign in. This will go ahead and sign me inside my organization. Hopefully this will go away, this white box. And now it'll allow me to sign into my Power BI. And if you guys use Office 365, there's this notion of workbooks or workspaces where you can actually group things together. So I always create myself a test for these demos. So I'm just going to find test mo group and just stick it in here for now. And now this will go ahead, save the Power BI file, now upload it to the service where I can now share it, set up daily refreshes of this data set if it was ever to change. And I can also do some other interesting things with it. I can also see quick insights, but I'm not going to do that today. So I'm just going to go into powerbi.com. And let's see if the report has actually shown up there. So if you go on powerbi.com, you click sign in the top right corner. You can just quickly go into the Power BI service. And it'll look very familiar to Power BI Desktop. It doesn't have the same level of capabilities as Power BI Desktop in terms of cleansing data, but it allows you to see and analyze the data. And so you can see a lot of people share dashboards with me every day. This is the UAT environment for Office 365 if you're very interested. Let me just find the work group that I was very interested in. So I'm just going to expand my work groups, click on more because I have quite a lot, and I'm going to go to test mo group. And hopefully you'll see the report has shown up there, the Olympic demo is there. So now I've got my report here, I can got my thing in. What I can do is now make a dashboard, which is basically a collection of different reports, tiles. And if I show you an existing dashboard, I had an MS Band demo, I can just create different tiles and just create my unique experience of what I want to look like. This is quite like Pinterest where you can pin different images onto your main favorite screen and analyze. And just every morning when you come into work, you can just see the high level information that you're really concerned with. And then if you notice an anomaly, you can actually drill down into reports. Very similar in here, I can also set up daily refreshes. So I have this notion of schedule refresh. So I can say, hey, schedule every day, every week, every month, every year. I can also analyze it in Excel. So if I'm very Excel savvy or my people in my organization are, if I share this with my business user and my business user notices a mistake, sometimes they want to actually do the analysis themselves. They don't want to wait for me, or sometimes they're on their weekend and they actually want to do some other insights. Within Power BI service, they can just click this button. They'll get the same data that I was just dealing with, and then they can do their own analysis. And this is the third wave, where everyone in the organization is empowered to do BI. I can also do quick insights, but on this data set, it may not come out with that results. What quick insights does is actually just goes ahead and finds you nice correlations in your graphs, and actually says, hey, did you know this? And actually comes up with some statistics about your data. It depends on the type of data set that you throw it. On the Olympic data set, it will come up with just telling you who the first, third persons are in terms of world ranking, and it'll be quite easy to find this information out. What I can do as well, if I go to the Olympic demo again, I'm just going to pin this graph onto my dashboard. I'm just going to say demo dashboard. I can actually use Cortana. Even if I had Cortana on my phone, which if I publish this dashboard, I can access Cortana from my phone, or I can just use Power BI Natural Language Query inside here. So let me try this out and see if this works today. So I can actually ask questions about my data, and I can say, hey, I'm interested in where Great Britain, and well, actually, let me ask a different question. Who's world ranking number 1 in 1996. Let's see if it decides to answer this. I spelled world ranking wrong, so it may not help there. And let me just do world ranking in order, and let's see if that helps. If it doesn't, maybe I've set up my model wrong. Okay, so it's decided to return me all the data. Maybe it wasn't called world ranking. Maybe I didn't call that column. I will give up here. What you can do is actually ask natural language query. If you train it and give it the nice suitable data set, I think I named the column incorrectly in the original data set, which is why it's not able to answer my question. And I can answer the questions through my PC device as well. So that's Power BI, the service, and Power BI Desktop working harmoniously together. The other great capabilities of Power BI is I can set up security, so I can make sure that only the right people in my organization see my data. I can also set up an on-premise gateway. So if my data sits on-premise and I don't really feel comfortable moving it to the cloud, like a lot of the financial services, you can still use Power BI as a web front end for your reports and dashboards, but you can use the on-prem data source and never bring the data source directly into Power BI. And so that way you can get around some of the security restrictions that may be set inside your organization. And so that's Power BI in a nutshell. What I'm going to do is just quickly go back to my slides and try to continue. Does anyone have any questions about Power BI? It's quite hard to see hands. Just shout if you do. And generally, Power BI is constantly adding. The service updates once every week. The desktop updates once every once every month. And we have a lot more capability that I'm going to show you later on. We have something called custom visuals, where you can actually, if you're good at D3.js, you can actually define and create your own custom visuals. If you're good with R, you can also create R visuals, so you can see there's a nice scatter plot of R on this diagram as well. And generally, you can make whatever you want. Power BI is a platform for you guys to go in and mold to what you want in terms of your own analysis. And that's what we've kind of done with the promise of Power BI. If I move ahead, the 5 promises for Power BI is really we are trying to engage our partners to actually drive a better partner community. And by doing so, we're allowing customers to quickly find partner-based solutions. And I'll show you that a bit later on as well. Obviously, it's to help you accelerate your making you more data cultured, making you drive better data-driven decisions. And I'm going to show you more the right side later on around solution templates and partner programs. So that's Power BI. If you guys used SQL Server reporting services about 4 or 5 years ago, you may have noticed that not much has changed. In the latest version of SQL Server reporting services, we are glad to announce that we have changed and overhauled the complete UI for SQL Server reporting services. So that's to make it more mobile friendly, to make it more aesthetically pleasing. And what I'm going to show you today is actually a demo of the new SSRS preview that I think released last week. And so SSRS has gone for a long learning curve. SSRS will eventually allow you to embed Power BI reports in SSRS. So for people who don't even want to use Power BI service online, you can actually embed Power BI reports that I've just authored on my desktop tool and actually upload them into SSRS, which is completely on-prem. So I don't have to even ever go into the cloud if my customer is not ready, or if I'm dealing with governments, or if I'm dealing with organizations that are just very locked down in their thinking in cloud. And so we don't want to alienate those customers. We've made SQL Server reporting services, made huge bets on this. And what I'm going to show you is actually how you can spin up the demo yourself, the one that released a week ago, and how you can quickly get there. Quick show of hands. How many of you actually have Azure accounts? Is there quite a few of you? So if you sign up for an Azure free trial account, I'm just going to show you very quickly. If you go to portal.azure.com, one of the great things we do is we keep this very up to date, and we actually release VM images of SQL Server reporting services. So if you ever want to demo this to your customer, if you want to demo this within your organization, you can actually go in and click on resource groups, which are like collections of resources in Azure. I've actually got I'm just going to click add and just show you how you'd go about doing this. I'm just going to add a new item. No, not that. Click add here. And what I'm going to type in here is SQL Server reporting services in my most recent. And if I click this, what it'll say is, hey, I'm going to create you a SQL Services reporting VM on your subscription, which will allow you to carry out the same demo I'm going to show you today. And so when you click create, it'll show you the Azure options if you're very familiar with Azure. Say, can you provide me a VM name, a username and password to log into your SQL Server reporting services, and some other basic information. I'm not going to go through these options because it can take about 10 minutes to spin up. Instead, what I did before the demo was actually spin one up for you guys. And let me just quickly see if I can navigate to it. So I saved the link here. When you set the VM, all you need to do is navigate to the VM and just go to the reports page. So just this URL here. It's going to go to another browser page and just go here. It's going to ask me my username and password that I just set. So I'm just going to click login. And so SQL Server Reporting Services has come a very long way. If you ever remember the old version, you'll notice that SQL Server Reporting Services drastically changed and will continuously evolving over the next couple of years. Our acquisition of DataZen has fed a lot into SQL Server Reporting Services. So as you can see, a lot of the stuff that we've acquired from DataZen has actually come into the SQL Server Reporting Services portal. So you can see that I can now have KPIs. So I can see, hey, how's North America doing if I'm the North America region? This demo was actually set for fraud detection, so I can quickly find out if there's any fraud happening within my organization in terms of if I'm managing sales. So I can look at my corporate scorecard, and again, I can just look at pages, quickly analyze the information, quickly see what's happening within my organization. And it's very interactive, very similar to Power BI. It doesn't have the same capabilities of Power BI, and that's why we've integrated Power BI directly in SSRS, which I'll show. And yeah, I would say it's gone the amount of investment that's gone into since I would say since 2008 SSRS, it's come a very long way. The paginator reports are still there, so if you've got queries that are running paginator reports, these will still render with a new, fresh look and feel of modern BI. I can again do the same capabilities I had before. I can print the reports out. I can zoom in. I can interact with these reports. Very similar to what I would do before. This query happens to render on one page. If it didn't, I can click the next icon and see different pages of the same report. I can also pin tiles to my favorites. So I've pinned some of my key KPIs. In this case, I was only interested in one KPI. Same way that you're doing Power BI. Same way the way you treat a dashboard. I have a favorites page where I can really suit to my own needs and requirements. The one thing that we're really investing in is actually making Power BI a second-class citizen for SSRS, or first-class citizen. And now if I click on some of the reports that come with the demo, I can now see Power BI embedded directly inside here. The data is on-premise. Power BI is on-premise. I author the reports on-premise. And I can also connect to outside data sources and bring them in using this tool as well. And so this is part of the first demo. Again, I don't need to convince you guys that I can interact it exactly the same way I do with Power BI. It's a like-for-like match. A lot of investment has gone in doing the effort to get this integrated in SSRS. So it's taken some time. And so this is why it's still in preview, and we'll be hopefully GEing this feature very soon. And so SSRS will become the hub or the Power BI service for you on-premise. And Power BI will act as a glue between hybrid data stories. So you can have your data sitting on-premise, in the cloud, and you can use the gateway and then link everything together and actually get one view of all your data points. So that's SSRS. I can show more later on if you guys are really interested in SSRS. I would highly recommend you to go ahead and spin up the VM yourself. And then once you've done the demo, you can just tune it down. It shouldn't cost you that much to run that example. And if you're using the free trial, it'll actually be concluded in your free trial.
Which version will that be released in?
So SQL Server 2016 came out. SSRS will have, I think, will come out under SQL Server Service Pack in terms of it'll come as a 27. It'll come as a separate download. So at the same time, when SQL Server it'll be 2017. We haven't committed to a date because we don't know when the date will be for GA. And that's something that if you want to follow up, I can hopefully get in touch with you, the PM who's managing the release cycle for that. Any other questions for SSRS?
None of these features will be available for previous versions of SQL Server.
So, in SSRS, you mean? So the SSRS preview will be, you'll be able to install it on top of SQL Server 2014. If that's what, you'll be able to install it on top. It'll be like a feature pack on top. But it'll be a separate install. And the reason why is I think it'll support up to 2012, actually.
But you'll still get all these new features.
You'll still get all these new features, yeah. You'll be not limited in those new features. There was a question at the back.
So is this I'm sorry, I'm confused. So is this a SaaS model of the offering of the SQL Server reporting?
No. So my VM, when you publish the VM, it actually gives you a public endpoint. The VM has port 80 open. So I've just gone to the VM and gone to port 80 and says go to reports. And this is what, if I was on premise, and I was locked this way behind a firewall. Only people inside my organization, inside my intranet could see this. I made it publicly facing just so I could do this demo nice and easy without having to remote into a VM and then showing you guys that I'm actually in a VM. It's purely for my convenience. Yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion.
So another question I have is the SSRS, one of the strong power is like extensibility. I can do more customization in SSRS compared to Power BI. Is this still valid, that it's still amount of customization and extensibility is there?
So when you say customization, which specific customizations? Like, have you an example?
I can write my own business logic by creating those import files.
Yes, so SSRS, the 2016 and above has a new format. I think they changed the format name just to indicate that it's 2016. The way you generate the reports is exactly the same way as you would generate for 2014. You have new controls, new buttons, new ways to render reports, new visuals. But the way you normally do that, the way you can embed business logic in it, the way you had still page generated reports was still there. To update your old reports, I think I'm not sure if there's going to be a utility to do that, but you can still do your old reports, do the same thing that you did, host it in the 2016 as well. So SSRS hasn't changed. What we've done is effectively introduced more capabilities, because SSRS went for a period where it didn't really get much updates, if I'm rightly honest with you. And now we've put a lot of investment inside it. Is there any questions, other questions for SSRS? Okay. So that's SSRS. Now let me go back to the slides. A lot of this is very demo heavy. My slides are just kind of 2 or 3 slides. So yeah, I went into the SSRS demo. Let me just move away past this SSRS demo, and let me now talk about scale out. One of the things that people tend to get really confused with when dealing with BI is once they fall off the cliff, they never return. And that is, they set up some nice looking reports, nice looking dashboards, but as the data sizes grow and grow and grow, eventually their reports render useless, and then they have to spend weeks to change the format, change the data schema because it didn't scale. And with Power BI Service, there's a 1 gig data size limit on if you just use a service directly. And we acknowledged that limit and said, hey, we can help you overcome that limit by you using SQL Server Analysis Services. Last year, we announced that we're going to make SQL Server Analysis Services a PaaS offering inside Azure. And what I mean by that is I can spin up SQL Server Analysis Services without requiring a VM. I can spin it up, pause it when I need to, when I want to minimize my costs, and only run it when my business needs it. And so that way I can keep a tight hold on my costs in my organization. I don't have to worry about patches, updates. This updates for itself because it's a part of the PaaS offering inside Azure. And I can keep an eye on my costs, which is the most important thing. And SQL Server Analysis Services allow you to deal with 100 millions, even billions of records at a time. And so SQL Server Analysis Service is basically what you find in SQL Server 2016. It's the same technology. We've just taken it out, put it inside Azure, provided a neat pricing around it, and effectively allowed you to quickly spin it up inside your organization. So that's one scale-out model, is if you notice that the refreshes are taking too long, the data size is just too large, you can use SQL Server Analysis Services to create yourself a tabular model inside SQL, like you would do in SQL inside Azure, and then access it exactly the same way you would do. And I'm going to show you how you can spin one up inside the Azure portal in a second. The next section is, how many of you heard of this notion called a data lake? Okay, so I'll just briefly go through it. So a data lake is a place where you just basically dump terabytes of data in. You dump in semi-structured data, structured data, any type of data. But the point is you just dump data in, and then when you want to answer the question that you need to ask, you then do a schema on read operation. It's the same idea as Hadoop. Hadoop has the same principle. You dump things in a file store. The file store is usually quite cheap. And then when you want to do the analysis on top, you pay for the compute to do the job that you need to run. The problem with Hadoop, of course, is you end up having to buy incredibly high, long line of infrastructure that requires it. With Azure Data Lake, we've actually don't require you to do that. You just write your query that you want to do on top of your data. You submit that to us, and you only pay for the compute for running that job. So if I was running a job that required, like I ran one this morning, it ran through about 50 meg of data, I charged myself, I think, 0.0003 cents of a dollar just to run that job. If I was dealing with terabytes of data, which we do internally for the Bing search logs, we used Azure Data Lake. And to really go through that, we only charge ourselves about $10 to really go through that. And it depends on how much data you're dealing with, but it's meant to be a scalable model. And so today I'm actually going to spend some time actually go through Azure Data Lake because I think it's very important in the BI world. As you deal with more and more data requirements, like adding in telemetry, adding in the logging, especially if you're working in the IoT space, the data volumes are just too large for you to just start piping into SQL. Because you then have to decide on your schema when you put it into SQL. Sometimes when you want to answer a question, you don't know what your schema will be until you actually figure out that this is a question I need to answer. And so with the changing roles of business, Data Lake will become more of a pivotal role inside an organization. And once you get the data out of Data Lake, you do your query, you can then pipe into SSAS and then still provide your business users with Fluid, Power BI, reports, dashboards, the whole lot, as you would normally would. And so I'm just going to spend some time actually going through SQL Server Analysis Services first, just really show you what it means in the Azure portal, and then go through Data Lake and how you would submit your first job. So let's start with SSAS. So as I mentioned, it's the same technology that you would find. SQL Server Analysis Services in Azure is only using tabular mode at the moment. If you want to vote for the idea to support multidimensional, just go ahead on user voice. We highly listen to user feedback, and please vote for your idea. It uses the same processing engine, DAX, if you've heard of DAX, which is basically a syntactical layer that allows you to write your own measures, your own calculations. So if I want to calculate the year-on-year growth of my organization, I could write a simple DAX expression to do that. It's all in memory. It can serve lots of my users. It can work with both on-premise and hybrid scenarios. So if my data sits in cloud or if my data sits on hybrid, SQL Server Analysis Services for Azure has a gateway story as well, so I can connect to wherever my data sits. So I'm not really bound by where my data is. And that's, I suppose, that is it from Analysis Services. I'm going to go in the Azure portal together when I go through Azure Data Lake in a second. Azure Data Lake, as I've kind of gone through, is this notion of a store, and you have the analytics layer. They work in harmonious with each other. You store your data, you pipe your data, telemetry data in. This could be in terabytes, even petabytes of data. There's no restriction in Azure Data Lake. And then when I want to actually do the analysis on top, I can use any utility I want. I can use something called uSQL, which is just SQL-like syntax, and I'm going to go through that today. Or I could use Spark or any of the other open source platforms. But the key thing here is I'm only paying for the compute. I'm never going to go in and say I need a 12 cluster node with 1 head node or 2 head nodes for high availability. I do not need to worry about that. I can now finally forget that. And from an Azure Data Lake story, I can really do a range of different things. Once I get and do the queries inside Azure Data Lake, I can start doing things like machine learning, real-time insights. I can do interactive queries, and I can do batch queries. So if I really want to get the answers really fast, I can run it in interactive mode. If I want to do batch queries, I can run it in batch mode as well. And that's what I'm going to show you today. And so typically, you wouldn't find BI people talking much about Azure Data Lake. You'll only hear the big data people talking about that, data platform specialists talking about that. But I think it's very important. And so let me just quickly come out of this slide deck, and let me go back to the Azure portal, my trusted Azure portal. And let me go back to my resource script. So for this demo, I actually spun up these resources in Azure today. I won't bore you. It just asks for my basic information, like my password. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Azure Analysis Services. So it appears under my Azure portal like it normally would. And there it is. I have a pause button, which when I click pause, I will no longer get charged for until I click unpause or run. So this allows me to optimize. I can create a job, which basically says every weekend, turn off my analysis services. And just from Monday to Friday, only turn it on. This is something you couldn't do with analysis services before. You normally have to buy the infrastructure. And there is no such thing as pausing the infrastructure in an on-prem environment.
What about the storage? Do you pay for storage?
So in analysis services, the pricing model includes the tabular model that sits on it. But you need to give it the data where it comes from. And that could be SQL Azure, so you'd pay for SQL Azure separately. It could be on-premise, and you'd pay for on-premise separately. Analysis services kind of sits as a separate entity. So as you notice, the only information I really need is this SQL server name, so analysis service name. And I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to open up SSMS. I've already connected to it. Let me just disconnect it, and I'll just show you. I'm doing no different. Analysis service, we've made it very hard for you guys to really notice the difference between on-prem or cloud analysis services. They use the exact underlying technology, and the tools treat them no different. There's no such thing as saying, hey, I can do this capability here, but I really can't do this here. We tried to make them effectively feature parity as much as we could. And so all I need to do is type in my a server address here. When I click connect, it's going to pop up with the OAuth screen, which is my Windows credentials. It actually uses my Microsoft.com credentials. Because I've already signed in before, it'll go in. And I can then view my databases, I can view my management, and I can assign permissions like I normally would. I can go into SQL Server Data Tools and use it exactly the same way as well and make my own SQL Server Analysis Service model. Now, for the purpose of today, I'm only actually going to go and create a model for you. I didn't think that was much useful for you guys' time, but I would highly recommend you to just go and spin it up in Azure, go and create your first database, and you just see the performance for yourself. Like, you can set up your own processing schedules and optimize it for really your own organization. So that's Azure Analysis Services. It's a great feature. A lot of customers highly requested it, and I think it will directly help provide that scale-out story for Power BI. Now, moving aside from analysis services, I'm actually going to go into Azure Data Lake. And with Data Lake comes with its own store, which is really cheap in terms of its data storage, and then it comes up with the data analytics engine. And so the Data Lake store, I'm just going to click on it, and I call it Tech Summit 2. Tech Summit was already taken. Someone might have taken it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go into Data Explorer. So the great thing is I can now put some sample data in. So I put some sample data in here, called samples, and I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to ambulance data, 'cause at the time of the demo I was looking at the data. And I've got lots of range of vehicle data here. As you can see, I've got a long, and obviously I've just shortened this for the demo so you guys weren't waiting an hour for me to analyze petabytes of information. But I've got a lot of data about different vehicles here. And what I want to do is actually combine all this data really easily and write a SQL query on top, maybe do a where clause, maybe do a group by statement and aggregate that data, so then I can do some analysis on Power BI later. And so in Data Lake, the great thing what we've done is we made the portal be a kind of a first place for you to go in to analyze this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close this. I'm going to close this again. And I'm going to go to the Data Store Analytics engine. So I'm just click it. And the first thing I'm presented with is, hey, do you want to manage the user permissions of who can submit jobs? You can see your job history. And what you can see is some sample scripts. And you can also say view all jobs and actually create a new job. Now, I'm not going to memorize the syntax that I wrote just 5 minutes ago before I came on stage. So I'm just going to go to a previous job and actually just click duplicate script and walk you through the script. And you guys can tell me, this is very much like SQL command syntax. So let me just walk you through this. If I can zoom in, maybe that might help you guys. So there's some slight nuances, differences between SQL and USQL, mainly because USQL relies on more of the data being unstructured and semi-structured, so we had to introduce new capabilities to handle those kind of capabilities. And that's where there's some nuances in syntax. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying at search log, which is a variable, search log, equals extract. And the data in my data store could be unstructured. In this case, I'm saying I'm reading a CSV file. And the CSV file is basically saying take anything that has the vehicle file path, star, anything after it, which is the date time, and .csv. So I want to consume anything that's CSV in sample data. I can also put another wildcard and say in any subroot folder as well, find any file that matches this. So I could take potentially all the data for all the ambulance across the USA, across the last 10 years, if I really wanted to. But for the demo, I didn't want to sit there and wait for you guys to watch a job complete. The data in this case, in the CSVs, were dumped in a specific format. I've now just decided to provide a format along the data. I've got vehicle ID, I've got line number when it came into my log file. I've got the time, the longitude, latitude of the actual vehicle when it was responded. So in this case, I've got an IT device in every single ambulance across the US. I can monitor where that vehicle is at any time. I've got the direction in terms of whether it's traveling northeast, north. I've got some values that I might be interested in, but I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm actually going to just go ahead and actually drill into the sample data set. So if I go to the Data Explorer, and let me see if I can access the sample data and just show you what the data looks like. So I've got ambulance data. I've got vehicle 1, vehicle 2, vehicle 3, vehicle 4. Let me just go into one of the CSV files. You'll see it's very simple, very typical scenario that you might have. You'll have log files, telemetry coming in this kind of format, and now you want to really analyze this information. If I go back, and let me just zoom out this time. Hopefully this won't affect my browser too much. And let me go to the job. all I have to do now is click submit job. It actually tells me how much this is going to cost me. This is going to cost me $0.03 a minute to run because the infrastructure I chose was a standard infrastructure. And you can decide if you want to run this across more computers and make this job finish faster. And you have a little slider to choose your scale model. I just chose the most simplest basic one just to show you that the example works even in the most basic scenario. And I'm just going to click submit job. And what this will do now is tell me how far my job is going to do. It actually gives you a nice pictorial example of where it's going to get the data from the different data sources. In this case, it's only going to show me one node, which is it's reading it from one location. And it gives me a nice little timeline of how the job's coming along. And as you can see, it says, hey, I'm going to do this extract step, and then I'm going to do an aggregate. Very similar to the way Hadoop MapReduce works. The first stage is a map. The second stage is a reduce, if you guys are really curious. And then it's going to output vehicle output, which is all the data shifted together in one view. I could have done a where clause where I'm looking at specific vehicles or specific time periods if I'm looking at anomalies for my organization. And so this is something that you couldn't do. Like imagine if I had petabytes of information, I would not dream of putting that inside SQL. And I would, unless I had specific questions to answer, I would put it in SQL if I had a daily report that would be coming out. In this case, I noticed there was an anomaly on a specific day. I actually want to go ahead and analyze it. And there's a great example of the Fitbit scenario, if you've ever heard of it. The guys at Fitbit, I think they noticed an earthquake in California. And so they used everyone's Fitbit data to figure out where the center of the earthquake was. And they did that by just going through, they said the fact that they stored all the data in this raw format helped them quickly find the insights. And they were the first ones to write the article. They wrote a blog post out saying we found out where the center is by working out which Fitbit devices were being triggered off at what time versus what happened to the others. And they were able to pinpoint the accuracy using Fitbit. And this is some of the things that you would never store in SQL. You're never saying, hey, I'm going to use this to predict earthquakes. You just wouldn't do that. And so the job is finished. The great thing here is I can just go in and just look at the sample output. So I can just quickly analyze it. If I want to debug my job as well, you can use Visual Studio. We have tools available as well. I'm using the portal just to show you how quickly it is to do. But I can actually go in the portal and just see how's the sample output doing. And then I can just pipe this data into SQL. I can pipe it into SQL Server Analysis Services. I can actually get Power BI to connect to Data Lake directly as well. And so it's up to your organization's needs and requirements. But Data Lake is there to allow you to analyze the further end of the spectrum of big data when you're really talking about the terabytes and petabytes of data. And in Microsoft, we use this to analyze our search log data. And the search log data is just huge. And for Google as well, it's very huge as well. You're dealing with data that you just wouldn't store. You would not analyze on a daily basis. You would analyze it probably on a month-by-month basis. But you still want to keep the historical data there just in case a situation arises. Maybe there's an anomaly in your search results that you want to go and optimize. And for machine learning as well, for people who are very tech-savvy data scientists, having all the historical data is a dream come true for you guys. And that's a very important thing for those ML guys. So that's Azure Analysis Service and Data Lake. Any questions about those two before I move on? Yeah.
General question, semantic models. So if you're going to make the reporting easier, we can create the models. You can do that in Power BI, you can do it in SSRS, you can do it in SSAS. You can kind of do it with however you output your jobs. Is there recommendation or guidance from an architecture perspective of where you do that, why you should pick one technology or another?
So there is definitely guidance. I think the discrepancy here is when you say semantic model, it depends what you mean by semantic model. Like, Data Lake is used for answering, in this case, this is a batch query. This is for me to answer a question or deal with petabytes of information. What I would normally do with Data Lake is get the data in a form that I would normally pipe into SQL, into a schema in SQL, and then I would use SSAS to pipe it, to basically connect to the SQL to then allow multiple users to fire different types of queries. The great thing about SSAS is because it's a cube-like structure, it's a column store index. If I'm trying to do slices or filters like I was doing with the Olympic dataset, to go to Great Britain and get the result within a second, SSAS was designed to handle that specific requirement, where some user may come in and say, hey, I want to understand how Ghana is doing, how Africa as a nation is doing. And so those kind of questions are not normally preempted, but they're in the data model in the way that I can just quickly provide the slice and dice to that cube. And that's where you'd use SSAS. SSAS is the kind of final point before the business user connects to you. They'll fire the queries to the SSAS. Whether you use SQL or data lake for your storage mechanism depends on the needs of your business. And normally you store, SQL will only have a backup job. You'll have a backup job that says, hey, every 2 months, can you date the data and put it in a data warehouse? And then when you come down the data warehouse, data lake route, it gets kind of mushy on when you should use which versus the other. And I suppose if you're using data warehouse, you're normally quite comfortable with the data warehouse tools. If you're using PDW or SQL data warehouse, Azure SQL data warehouse, you're normally quite comfortable. Mainly it's to do with the skill sets within your organization. When you use data lake, and data lake's recently been a new phenomenon, this notion of a Hadoop, is when you're dealing with, I would say, more of a batch, when you don't know the question you're answering. You want to just analyze lots of data. It's not in the format you need it. You want to do lots of cleansing. And so you're kind of bringing ETL in one cycle. In SQL, your data is quite heavily organized. You've already got the tables. You've already got your customer table. You've got your customer location. And you've already got the tables. And you're kind of working within that constraint. And so there is definitely guidance. But I'd say it depends on the specific niches of what you're comfortable with in terms of an organization. And it also depends on what you guys are looking to do in terms of answer. Like if you need this question answered always, you probably want to do an ETL process, have a data lake job that kicks off, and then writes into SQL. And then you'll use SQL and SSAS together. I kind of see them as like harmonious with each other. But it's a good question. One of the great problems of data lake, and generally the technology in the last 10 years is there's so many startups that have made so many different tools. And sometimes it can be a pain when you're talking to your customers saying, you might use this, you might use this, you might use this. There's about 5 different streaming technologies that I know of. And sometimes the customer can get just overwhelmed. And sometimes you just have to say, look, we're going to go with this unless we notice we hit the limitations. And I used to work in consulting for 3 years. Sometimes the customer would be concerned about the technology they would use. Sometimes they just don't want to go down to lockdown. They don't want to be locked down to a specific infrastructure, specific software. And so that's the great thing about using cloud. If they want to go away from Data Lake is a kind of a different example. Data Lake allows you to use Spark, Hadoop, or any other proprietary tool you normally used to use. Data Lake is just kind of an intercessor in the layer, saying, hey, I will allow you to use the same cost model, but you can use whatever you want. And so I see the need for, and then there are different architecture guidelines, data guidelines, of when you should use which. But I would say it's one of those things that you kind of got, like with experience will come with which one you'd use in which situations. Sorry, the answer is not that helpful. I've used quite a lot of Hadoop implementations. Azure Data Lake is still in preview at the time when I was using it with customers. So customers didn't like me using preview products until it comes GA'd, just mainly for a support cycle. And so I'd say depending on the needs of the customer, depends on which you'll use. Any other questions for Data Lake or Azure Analysis Services? Okay. So I'm going to go back to my slides, and I'm going to go through something a bit more fun now, which is the advanced analytics section. So people, when they normally say business intelligence, they normally mean answering the question of what. What happened in my organization? So let me look at the data that I have now, and let me go and figure out what happened, so then I can go and tell my business manager or my higher-ups what happened in this situation. Why did my sales hit this problem is a different question altogether. And so this is where you're talking about this notion of advanced analytics, answering the what, the how, and the why. And so in Microsoft, we have kind of provided 2 kind of models for you. One is take an API that we've made for you, a pre-built model that we've got our data scientists to build, and then you can just plug and play them into your Power BI report. And I'm going to spend a lot of time on this with a demo of Power BI showing this very capability. We've also shown that sometimes you have got a model highly specialized for a customer. You want to just go and build it using your data science team to go and build a highly specialized model. And that's why we have something called Azure Machine Learning Studio. Now, if I have time at the end, I will go through this, but I'm not going to spend too much time showing you how you can make machine learning models today. I think there's a separate track, separate session that'll actually go through that. And so when people normally refer to business intelligence, I normally see them answering the what, but never the how and the why. And that's where advanced analytics really comes in, really shines, is saying, hey, I can understand what happened to your sales. I can understand how it happened because of this the weather conditions outside. Now, wouldn't it be great if I could understand what contributors actually factored into that cause, and why, if I could predict that, could I then better estimate and handle my resources in my organization? So let me give you an example of a customer that I worked with. Let's take a typical supermarket. If I could predict my sales for my supermarket for each product, I could then better optimize my storage requirements of what products I order when. And you think it sounds like a very trivial problem, but it's actually a very expensive problem for supermarkets. Storing an extra bit of produce, having extra storage inside my supermarket is actually a very costly operation. They spend millions on this. And just making a machine learning model that has 60 or to 70% accuracy, like even with a 30% failure, will save them potentially 1 million to 10 million in the annual revenue, or in terms of the annual costs they could reduce. And so machine learning has been, as you guys hear the buzzword of machine learning, it's now turned into AI. It's kind of the same conglomerate thing, kind of wrapped up into different technologies like deep neural networks. You'll hear this more and more from Microsoft as well. They're becoming more AI-driven. And the first start is just getting people in the BI world to just plug in some of the out-of-the-box models, like even doing sentiment analysis on textual data. And that's what I'm going to show you a demo of today. And an example of what I'm going to show you today is something what Microsoft has really spent some time on is building, is this thing called solution templates. Has anyone actually heard of solution templates before? So just the one, maybe the two. So solution templates is designed to provide an end-to-end BI solution. So you come into Power BI website, you say, hey, I have CRM, I have sales management. I don't know what reports I should be looking at. I don't know what ML models I need to plug in. I don't know what I need to see. But I've got my CRM opportunity data with me. Can you make me a really compelling use case business scenario with that? And so the solution templates is a wizard where you just fill in your information like your CRM instance, your CRM password, your SQL, if you want to store the data in SQL, you want to pipe it to SQL so you can do good analytics on it. And then we give you a Power BI file that has pre-made dashboard and reports. These reports and the SQL structure that we make are enterprise-grade ready. So they use the best practices that we have inside Microsoft. And today what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go through the campaign and brand management for Twitter, just briefly outline what that actually means. And I'm going to show you a news template which hasn't released yet. And so before this session kicked off, what I decided to do was go onto the Power BI website and actually spin this up for real. So let me show you how quickly you can spin one up. I'm not going to go through the whole process, but just to give you an example. So if you go into solutions, you'll see this thing called solution templates. It's a relatively new thing. It's only been there since, I think, June from last year. And we've been releasing one around that 2 to 3 months we've been releasing. And so what you can do is if you have a customer, you can say, click Learn More, and you can see a review report. And you can say, hey, if you want to do campaign brand management using Power BI, here's an example report of what that will look like. And you can actually go in. What we did was here, we captured Power BI hashtags and said, hey, let's look at the tweets. And there's a nice, cool custom visual that I'll show you in a second, which allows you to quickly analyze the sentiment data. So this is where I'm starting to bring in advanced analytics, really simple sentiment analysis that you've probably seen thousands of demos before, and now bringing that inside Power BI. One of the other cool things is your customer may say, hey, but my organization is Walmart, or my organization is Tesco's. Can you show me it with my data? That's a very good question that they normally ask. And the great thing is within 8 to 10 minutes, I can actually spin this demo up very quickly for myself. So if I click Install now, this will take me to a provisioning page where we spin up a range of Azure resources. So if I click Next, it will ask me for my Azure credentials, and it will ask me for my Twitter search terms and queries. What do I want to search for in Twitter? And then right at the end of the process, I'll get a Power BI file. So anyone who has an Azure subscription can go in today, spin this up. In about 8 to 10 minutes, you will have a Twitter report showing the tweets that you're concerned about. And it will be collecting those in real time. So if you keep refreshing your Power BI report, you'll see that your tweets will just keep coming in, and you can see, you can be monitoring Trump, Clinton, if you're watching the debate. You can see those tweets coming in and see the different trends and clusters that are formed within them. So what I'm going to show you is I actually did the same thing for MS Tech Summit this morning. I span it up for MS Tech Summit. Let me just open up that Power BI file and see how that's coming along. Now, I did not look at this file, so I have no idea whether there's any meaningful data, but let's just see if I go into the Twitter template. So the Twitter template uses some machine learning, uses clustering, and uses sentiment analysis. Very simple pre-built models using the cognitive services. We use a logic app inside Azure. If you know what logic app is, it's basically we use it as an ETL. So we say once we get a tweet in, can you perform sentiment, and then can you do topic clustering? And that's it. And then pipe it to SQL. It's a very simple logic app. I'll show you that later on. I'm just going to refresh this. So it's connecting to SQL. And let's see if I can see any clusters. So in Power BI, I showed you that we have custom visuals. We have a whole gallery dedicated to custom visuals. The MSR team that made this, Microsoft Research team, actually made these reports and actually made this cool visual called a clustering diagram. And I'm just going to click author hashtag, and I'm just going to zoom in and zoom out, and I'll show you what this graph shows you. So in the center of this graph, you'll see a black dot. Hopefully it's black, it's slightly gray there. The black dot basically means is what topics am I listening for? And in this case, the hashtag that I was listening for was MS Tech Summit. So it's by natural cause that I expect you guys to have tweeted MS Tech Summit in most of your queries, which is why I said the center mass of this clustering diagram. The green dots are all the people who have tweeted about it. So if you guys are, if anyone's a top tweeter here, I probably can find you in here and see how you've responded to some of these tweets. I'm not going to do that because just in case, if there was a negative sentiment, I do want to, remain, keep that anonymous. And so the black dots are clusters. So what I might be interested in is saying, hey, let me see what other clusters I can see that are talking about MS Tech Summit. And so I expect very similar, like someone's been talking about Office 365. There must have been some cool keynote regarding the MS 365, Office 365. You guys tell me, I wasn't part of the keynote this morning. I presume there was some Office 365 announcement. What I can do is drill in specifically to the keynote and say, hey, what clusters formed during the keynote? What was talked about? And it's no surprise that I see the keyword keynote, keynote Microsoft come up. I can also see Jason Zander appears. So people were talking a lot about Jason Zander's keynote. And I can see some other clusters as well, like BI, partners, intelligent apps. I presume there was an intelligent apps demo during the keynote today. You guys can tell me what went on there. And I can quickly understand what happened at specific times. I can do the same for tomorrow's keynote or closing keynote if there is one. I can do the same for each session and say, hey, what are people talking about? What are people really enthusiastic about in terms of Microsoft, the MS Tech Summit? Again, I'm going to go to another view, and I'm just going to look at the pivoting overview. I can see that on average, you guys are very positive about the MS Tech Summit. This is great to see. I've got some people talking about potentially it's a very low negative score, so maybe it's neutral. And some people who may have spoken in a different language that wasn't picked up by the sentiment analysis, so there's an undefined section there as well. And again, I can click on specific tweets. I can say, hey, let me look at the authors, the MS. I'm not going to pick on any specific author. I can see people are talking about Chicago because it was based in Chicago. And again, I can quickly analyze the tweets that are coming in real time. I wouldn't normally sit there and watch every single tweet. That would be impractical for me to do. There could be thousands and thousands of tweets. But in this case, I can just go to quick feel of quick tweets I need to respond to. If there's highly negative ones or highly positive ones, I want to make sure I'm engaged with the community. Later on, I'm going to show you the app story where when Power BI and BI meets apps, is I could then set up a job which says, when I get a negative tweet, can you go and act on it? Can you send a response message to this user and saying, I am very sorry for the discomfort we have caused you. Let us get someone to help you with this problem. Could be someone's unable to find a room. I found a tweet earlier on today, can't find it now, where someone couldn't find a room. They tweeted about it and MS Tech Summit got back to them. Some good examples where you want to kind of automate the process flow. And so this is the Twitter template. You guys can spin this up today yourselves, put your own hashtags and queries in, and you'll get the same report I'm showing you here. There's no magic, there's no specific demo material. I literally spun this up about a couple hours before the keynote this morning. So I'm just going to close this down and actually now show you where if you really want to go down to the sophisticated, we're going to have a news demo template where we bring in news articles, where if you give us the news article name and your Azure credentials, we will create you this news template, which will use the Cognitive Service Library from the Azure Gallery, which uses sentiment analysis, uses topic clustering, uses key phrase extraction, and uses clustering, another type of clustering model, which I'm going to show you. So in this case, I thought I'd be a bit experimental. Let me look at Pokemon Go. This demo was done in October when Pokemon Go was a bit more prevalent. So you can see the top corner, you can see the data when I've really taken the data. And I'm just going to walk you through this, and I show you how much power you can add to business intelligence if you just add a bit of machine learning into it. And so on the far left, bottom corner, I can see topics. Topics that have come prevalent within the articles. And so if I just zoom in, I can see some very interesting ones about Pokemon Go. I can see Donald Trump, Clinton coming up as very popular, and I might be very interested in why are these people coming up with Pokemon Go? How are these articles somewhat related? And I might do that in a second. I can see some other topics where people are talking about Hague, which is a place in the Netherlands. And I'm like, why are these places coming up? In quite a popular article as well in terms of my topics. 24 people have mentioned this topic in their articles. Some of the other things I can do is I can look at, we extract entities. Entity is like a people, organization, location. And so I've organized it in terms of organization or location. I can just click view more and actually view a list of organizations that have been talking about it. And I see Microsoft Research is there as well. I'm like, wow, we're there. Why is that? And I can actually click in and drill down into specifically that more. I'll do that in a second. One of the other things I can do here is again, I can view it by sentiment. So the tabs at the bottom, I can go into sentiment, I can go into topics. And what I'm going to do for you guys now, I'm just going to go into, let me see why Microsoft Research is prevalent here. So again, everything cross filters, slices, I can see exactly people talking about Microsoft Research, mainly from Tuesday the 11th, I think that's in November. And I see this top article, and I'm just going to click on it and hopefully expand this out. 1 second. And the headline here is Pokemon Go could add up to 2.83 million years to users' lives. So Microsoft Research did a study, and as you can see, the top trending tweet or article the top trending keyword that went alongside these articles was steps. So as you see on the top right, I can see the trending keywords just quickly getting the summary. The great thing here is I can also see which entities appear here. So I can see Microsoft Research is mentioned in red. I can see the locations mentioned in this article. So I can just quickly navigate this article without having to read it. So I can say, hey, I'm interested to see when Microsoft Research was mentioned. So I might just click on Microsoft Research and it'll just navigate me across the article. So in this case, I can analyze a very long article and quickly analyze which parts of it am I really interested in. In this case, Microsoft Research did a good study where they actually determined that people who play Pokemon Go are more likely to live longer because they actually do more exercise. And so they worked out that 2.83 million years of lives could be saved just by releasing the Pokemon Go app. And this is something you would not normally have considered. There was also one about NASA that they've started catching Pokemon Go in NASA. I'm not sure if you saw that article in the space. They were catching Pokemon Go characters as well. And these are some things, insights you would not normally be able to do. This is another template we're going to be releasing very soon, hopefully at the end of this month. This uses a range of advanced analytics capabilities, uses a range of cognitive services, and what you really require is an Azure subscription and the news articles you're really concerned with. And we'll spin up this whole template for you as you see it today. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I could sit here and go through sentiment, seeing how people look at the Clinton tweets and go through how the sentiment was there. I could start going into the different topics across the articles. And again, I'm just using the Power BI capabilities, the BI capabilities, and here I'm using the full stack. I could be using SSAS to power the tabular model. I could be using Power BI to do the visual front end. To do the analysis, I'm using Azure Machine Learning, I'm using cognitive services, and I'm using the full Microsoft breadth of the stack. But most people normally struggle with trying to integrate a lot of our stack together, and so that's why the solution templates is a great example of that. You just come in, Azure subscription, give us the topics, we'll go and do the work, and you actually can go and customize the ML models afterwards. We leave everything on your subscription, nothing's a black box. So if you guys want to add some really sophisticated ML for your customers' needs, please feel free to do that. The templates are completely free for you to use. The only consumption that you pay is for the actual Azure subscription costs for the actual underlying services. These templates are 100% free and will always remain that. So I'm just going to come out of here, and what I'm going to do is quickly go into the final segment, which is apps. I don't have too much time to go into the apps demo, but I'll quickly briefly talk about it. So the final section is the fourth wave, and this is where I see people really starting to figure out and realize that SaaSifying applications is such an important thing. BI is great, but if someone can't act on the BI, it's not really meaningful. They end up having to go through 15 other different portal pages in their organization to actually carry out the task. And so what we've done as a first step is actually release Power BI Embedded, which is a small Power BI Azure service, which it provides a list of APIs which allows you to embed reports into applications. So the person that is now using your application does not need a Power BI license. That's the key thing here. You can embed it. You pay the Power BI subscription cost. It's a different pricing model. If you want to find out more, just go on the Azure portal calculator and you can find out that. And I can quickly integrate Power BI, or it's really not Power BI. I can integrate visuals inside my applications. And by integrating my visuals inside my application, I can now create a very rich application that not only allows me to see, hey, my cells are failing, or there's this item that's failing inside my aircraft that I need to repair if I'm doing IoT solutions. I can then click create service ticket, or create or action an email with my staff. And I can create act, and we call it the act orientation, where I measure using analytics, but I can act on these analytics and actually drive better data-driven decisions. And so Power BI Embedded is kind of the first way where we have a list of APIs, and you can use a range of different APIs. We have the Azure Resource Manager, which is basically the Azure APIs, along with the REST APIs for Power BI. So I can say, hey, give this Power BI report to someone, but render it in this way. I can say when someone slices the report, navigate them to this page and let them see the report in a different view. So if I'm using CRM, and I click on a graph and I say, hey, I want to look at my top accounts, and I look at the revenue, and I say I want to filter on these accounts that have the lowest revenue, it can directly go and show me those accounts. So I'm now creating rich applications, but using Power BI as a mechanism to do that. I had a demo to show you, which is just a browser page. I've just run out of time. I want to save some questions and answers. If you guys want to get any of the demo material, I'll post it online onto the blog post, and you'll be able to quickly go in and see all the demos I've done today are readily available on either the Power BI website. I now open the floor for questions, and I'll be here until the end of the session. Thank you, guys. So,
In that Power BI embedded, you can store the data with the objects, right?
So in the Power BI embedded scenario, you normally bind it to a SQL Server analysis, a SQL Server store where the data comes from, and that will be your SAST version of SQL Server. That will be the partner or the person who creates the application manages that. The user doesn't need to ever care about their user permissions, and then you map their AD token to the SQL Server password and username that you want them to use. So you can manage that whole story. So yeah, it's a very platform-focused play. Like it's not like it doesn't come without the box. You could use Power BI visuals from GitHub and actually just get the data from your own, wherever it comes from, and then render the visuals the way you want to. So Power BI Visuals is open source. You can go in and use the same visuals that you see on PowerBI.com and actually use them in your own applications. So maybe that's what you mean more of you can just bind the data set onto the JSON payload for the visual, and it'll render. Any other questions? Yeah?
On the Power BI embedded, does that include the custom visuals and like the R visuals, or just the ones that are just standard out of box in Power BI?
Custom visuals are supported. I'm not sure about R visuals. I'm not sure if RRs are supported because in R, we have a dedicated R server that runs all the R visuals through the engine that we host for Power BI for you. For Power BI Embedded, we wouldn't want you to go and spin up your own R environment. And maybe that capability may be coming. I'll actually follow up with the PM to see where that is. You'll see that on a blog post. I'll post on the blog post with more information. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.